All right, looks like we're recording. So we're going to start on chapter 2.1, which is organizing qualitative data. Okay. So just as a reminder, I'm going to pick on Mackenzie because I happen to remember her name. What's qualitative data? Remember? Know what it is? I bet you could guess. You can't guess? Not against the law. What do you think quantitative data is? You don't want to guess either? Okay, Isaac.
Qualitative data is like mostly like observations and things that you can see, but maybe they don't have numbers associated with them.
Yeah, they don't
like
necessarily have numbers.
Survey data or something. You might have a survey that has open-ended questions.
Okay.
So you have a bunch of information from people's opinions and stuff, but it's not easily quantifiable. Whereas quantitative data, it's like straight up numbers that you can put in a spreadsheet or you can graph or something.
Right. Yeah. So quantitative, you can measure it. Qualitative, actually, qualitative data you could do is counts, like how many or what color of cars are in the parking lot. You could say there's 5 red, there's 3 green, there's 2 gray, or whatever. So the green, red, and the gray, that would be a qualitative variable. Does that make sense? Okay. So, so we're going to talk mostly about qualitative data today. And we're going to bring up a few terms. One's called a frequency distribution. Okay. So a frequency distribution is where you list each category and number of occurrences. Then we have what we call a relative frequency distribution, which it's the same thing. You're going to list each category and percent. Okay, so this is number, this is percent of occurrences. And then you have a cumulative distribution, which is the same thing. List each category and the sum of occurrences above. Okay? And finally, we have what we call a Pareto chart, which is a bar graph in descending order. Okay? So go ahead and open up Excel and also open up Canvas. So I guess I better turn on my computer. That would be nice, huh? All right, let me start sharing here. All right, so if you go to the statistics class, you go to assignments, and then you go all the way to the bottom. We've got import assignments in class worksheets. Okay, let's go ahead and let's open up worksheet 2.1. This way you won't have to type in all this stuff. Okay, so All right, a physical therapist wants to know the types of therapy required by patient. So create a table with a relative frequency. Okay, so basically, you just keep track of who comes in the office. We had 12 people that came in with a back injury, 2 wrists, 1 elbow, 2 hips, 3 shoulders, mornings, etc. Okay? So that right there, I already created it. That's exactly what a frequency distribution is. Okay? You've got the categories here. I wish this worked. And then you've got the, oh, did they turn this off completely? That's really annoying. That used to be a touch screen. Let me see here. Oh, it kind of touches. Maybe I have to use that. Okay, I didn't used to have to use that. But anyway, so here's your categories, here's your frequency, and so basically this table here, that is your frequency distribution. Okay? Now, it's Russell. How do you figure out what a relative frequency distribution is?
So I guess you need to the amount of times it's happening.
So we need to get the total here, right? Now, by the way, whenever you're doing the total, I always like to leave a gap so that you know the total separately. Sometimes people don't put a gap there, and then it makes, sometimes people think that's part of the data. Now, let me show you some cool things here, okay? If you press this auto sum, the Greek letter sigma, that's the letter S in Greek, okay? That always means, not always, but it often means sum. Now, by the way, this is also the letter sigma. This is uppercase, this is lowercase. This is lowercase s, this is uppercase s in Greek, okay? So if it looks Greek to you, it is, okay? Now, so this usually means sum. This usually means standard deviation, okay? And even Bill Gates knows that it almost looks like an E, but it's actually an S, the Greek letter S. If you press that, what it'll do is it says, hey, do you want to add up this entire column? And then it goes to this little Las Vegas light show thing here. And it asks you if that's what you want to add up. In our case, that is exactly what we want to add up. Sometimes it guesses wrong. But anyway, so we have here a total of 28 patients, okay? So Russell, so we can do the relative frequency this time. Okay. Now, anytime that you want to do a formula, you always have to start with an equals. Okay. And then it knows, oh, I got a formula coming here. Okay. So equals. Now, what should I do to find the first percentage?
I don't know. Are there other people without back injuries? Is that what we're getting?
We want to know how many people have back injuries. Or what percent of people have back?
28.
So 12. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on the 12. Now notice that 12 is in cell B5, okay? So it's going to build the formula for me. And then when I want to divide, I press the slash key. And then I'm going to click on the 28. And so it builds that for me, okay? So I want B5 divided by B15, okay? All right, now we know that 42.8% of people have back injuries. Now, it might be tempting to copy that. Now, here, let me unshare for a second. Okay. I'm going to go back to the board here for a second. A couple things. Number one, that means sum. These are both the Greek letter sigma. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about a relative reference, and we're going to talk about an absolute reference. Okay, I want to put a $sign there for absolute. Okay, so a relative reference changes when you copy, and an absolute reference is you press the F4 key and it puts $signs in your formula, and it does not change. Okay, now this is a little bit of Excel here. Now, by the way, so I was looking here, I'm going to ask you guys, I'm not going to make a decision today, but I am curious, okay? I think it's a little bit too early to give you a test this week, okay? Now, next Monday is Labor Day. So the question is that I have for you all, would you like to take the test? It'll be a 2-day test. It's going to be, do you want to take it Tuesday and Wednesday after Labor Day, or do you want to have a class on Tuesday and take it Wednesday and Thursday? So who wants to take it Tuesday and Wednesday? Nobody. Who wants to take it Wednesday and Thursday? Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So whatever we get to, probably get about halfway through chapter 3 next week. So so we'll do that probably. That's what I kind of what I thought you would say. So so the test will be next week. So here's the deal. The first test, so Wednesday we will have the test in class. It'll be a written test. Just kind of like a long quiz, basically. It'll take up an hour. And then Thursday we will have an in-class test, okay? Now, I'm going to give you guys some nice Excel helps here. I'm recording this so that you guys can see. But you're probably, you need to know this well, okay? So practice your homework on the computer today, because what's going to happen is, especially for those of you who don't use Excel very often, you're probably going to run out of time, okay? So practice, 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 and then you won't run out of time, okay? Now, I only can put 5 tests in the testing center. Normally I'd put it in the testing center, but this probably the first 2, maybe 3 tests are probably pretty easy. And after that, then I'll let you take as long as you want in the testing center. For the computer part, we will always take the written part in class, okay? All right, so now let's go back here. We're going to share the screen again. So if I go back here, now it might be tempting. Oh, actually, before I do that, okay, go back to the board. Okay, so Control C equals copy. Control X equals cut. Control V equals paste. Now, when you look at your keyboard, X, C, and V are all next to each other on the keyboard, okay? So there's a couple ways to copy here. Now let me go back and we're going to start sharing again. Share. Okay, so you may say Control C copy. I like that formula. It worked perfectly. And then either with your mouse, you can highlight this and you can press Control V to paste. And the problem is, look at that, it says division by 0, right? Okay, so as you can see here, the formula's changed. Well, the problem is, I wanted the first number to change, but I wanted the second number, B15, I want that not to change, okay? So I want B15 to be an absolute reference. I want B5 to be a relative reference. So what you can do here is if you click up here in the formula bar, notice it's got the blue and the red there. It kind of shows you which cells you're using. But if I press the F4 key, watch what happens to your formula here. That B15 becomes $B, $15. Okay? If you keep pressing F4, that will move around. Okay, now sometimes that can be to your advantage. I'm just going to use the $B, $15. We want that cell not to change at all, okay? And so now when I copy that formula, Control C to copy, and then I highlight my stuff. If you hold the Shift key, for those of you who don't like the mouse, you can hold the Shift key and then use the arrows down. And then you can press Control V and look at that. It works perfectly now. Now, as you'll notice here, when you look up here in the formula bar, okay, that was the wrong marker. When you look up here in the formula bar, notice the first number changes, the second number does not. Okay, the first number up here is a relative reference. The second number is an absolute reference. Does that make sense? Okay. So that works out fine. Now, just to make sure that this works well, you could press auto sum and look at that. It adds up to 100%, so that's perfect. Okay? Does that make sense? Who's going to practice doing their homework in Excel tonight? Okay? I know these are pretty easy. You can go 12 divided by 28 on your calculator, which I'll probably have you do tomorrow. I would like you to be able to do this with a calculator and with the computer. So tomorrow's quiz will be on paper. The test, you'll probably have to do this on paper as well as the computer. Okay? Does that make sense? So I'll teach you everything you need to know, but sometimes I go too fast. We run out of time. All right. Okay, so we've talked about a frequency distribution. We've talked about a relative frequency distribution. Now I want to talk about a cumulative distribution. Okay? So the cumulative distribution is the sum of everything above whatever category you're on. Okay? So this first one, there's nothing above back, so I'm just going to press equals B5. Okay? This first one is just going to be 12. Okay? The second one is going to be the 12 plus the 2. The 2 plus the 12. Now, some of you may want to do that one. Don't do that one. Use this 12. Okay? So you're going to use column B plus column D. Okay? So this is my formula, B6 plus D5. Okay? Now, if you do this right, oh, by the way, here's another way to copy. Notice I've got the white plus here. If I put it right on this corner, it's going to turn into a black cross. Not arrows, but the cross, okay? If I click and drag, it will do a copy and a paste all in one fell swoop. Look at that. And if I did it properly, the last one should be 28. I have 28 patients that had a neck, groin, hand, knee, shoulder, hip, elbow, wrist, back, or back injury. Okay? So your cumulative distribution should add up to the total, which in this case is 28. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, let me do it wrong just to show you what happens if you do it wrong. You could say equals 2 plus the 12, okay? And that's also 14, and you'll think, oh, that's good, that number's correct. But when I copy this down, watch what happens. It doesn't add up to 28. Okay, so that's an improper formula. Okay, so now a couple other commands here to show you. Control Z equals undo. Control Y equals redo. Okay? You don't have to memorize those, but if you do, they could be helpful to you. Those are some quick commands. These three I would probably tell you probably want to do because you'll use those a lot. Okay? Control Z, yeah, actually Control Z is a good one too. Probably should keep that one. Okay? Or also, going back to Excel, if I press Control Z, oh, actually, if you press this arrow right here, that's undo as well. And this arrow here is redo. Okay, so you can do that as well. Okay? All right, so now, what if I wanted to do relative cumulative distribution? I didn't write that one on the board, but I could ask for it. So, since Brandon was stretching, can you help me figure out how to write that command in Excel? Relative cumulative distribution, what do you think that does?
List each category so we can correct this. So would we just do equals
B5. What?
Would we do equals B5?
Well, we're going to do relative. So relative means percent, right?
Oh, okay. All right. So we're going to do first the sum of all the ones in row D.
No. So the first one would just be the back. Okay, so we've got 42. So you can actually, if you click on cell C5, that'll be about 42%. So the first formula is going to be different than the second formula. So in this case, there's nothing above the back. Okay, so I've got 42.8%. Okay, and by the way, no sense converting those to percent. You can just leave them as decimals. That's perfectly fine. Okay, the second one. Can you help me with the second one, Brandon?
Huge curveball. Yeah, I was like completely on board until this.
Okay.
This one.
So we're gonna add the wrist and the back injuries together. So how do I do that percentage-wise?
You just add them equals the 24,285 plus.
Do I use the one in column C or the one in column E? The
column
E plus
plus C6.
Plus C6, this is the 7%. Okay? All right, so that adds up to 50%. Now, if I did this formula right, what should the last one be? 1 or 100%. Okay? Let's see if I did this right. Slick. Okay? All right, now, another thing we could do is we could create different types of graphs. Okay? So we're going to talk about two types of graphs. Now with with qualitative data, okay, the two main types of graphs are going to be the pie graph and the bar graph. Okay? All right, so here's how I'm going to do that. Okay? I'm going to highlight here the body part. Now make sure that you include the column heading in here. And we're going to do a frequency distribution of the of all these injuries, okay? So now, in this case, so I've got that highlighted, and I'm going to press Insert, and now I've got all these charts here. Now I could do a bar graph, I could do a pie graph. Let's pick this one here. We'll do the bar graph first, okay? So remember, in this class, we are never use 3D. I know it's very artistic, but the problem is it distorts your graph. Okay, so we're never, ever, ever going to use 3D graphs. We're going to use a 2D graph, okay? So if I click on this 2D column graph, okay, now that's great here. Now, it's poorly labeled though, okay? So what I might want to do, instead of having the word freak here, I'm going to put types of, let me try that again. Oh, it was doing it there. Types of injuries at PT clinic. Okay? Now the problem is I have no labels. So another thing that you're going to want to do is when you have your graph here, you're going to click on this plus sign here. And we want to add axis titles. Okay? Now the question is, what does this represent here? 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way up to 14. What does that represent? So amount of injuries, or you could, it also represents people, right? Number of patients, okay? And down here, what should we put here for the axis title on the bottom? Body part injured, okay? All right, so one of the biggest problems that people are going to do on the test next week is they're not going to label their graph, okay? If it's poorly labeled, I'm going to take off a couple of points, okay? So make sure that you label that, okay? So that's a bar graph. Now, we're going to do a pie graph, okay? Tell me your name.
Connor.
Connor, can you help me create a pie graph?
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta highlight the data.
Highlight the data.
Be on insert.
Insert.
And instead of bar option, it's just a
We can do the pi option this time, and we're going to do the 2D pi, right?
Yes.
Now the nice thing about this is, I should make this a little bit smaller so I can see them both on the same, okay? Nice thing about the pi graph, it automatically puts a legend in there for you. That's kind of nice. Now what would you like to call this graph? Yeah, types of injuries at PT clinic. It's weird that I can't see what I'm typing, but it took it. Okay? All right. Now, we also talked about a Pareto chart. What is a Pareto chart? Tell me your name. Jenna? Pareto chart? Bar graph in descending order. Is my bar graph in descending order? No. But what I can do is I can highlight my data here just like this, and I can click on data, and then I can click on sort. And instead of sorting it by the first column, I could sort it by the frequency column. And I could go smallest to largest, or I could go largest to smallest. Okay? So I want to go largest to smallest. Okay, now watch. Now, it's probably going to mess up my formulas a little bit. Maybe or maybe not, I'm not sure. I might have to fix those in a minute. But now, I've just turned my bar chart into a Pareto chart. Okay? Brandon, did you have a question?
Yeah. How did you pull up that little box to put the number?
Just use your mouse. Okay, here, I'm going to Control Z to undo that. Okay? Use your mouse, highlight, include the headings in here, and then you go to data, sort, and then you can pick which column you want to sort by. I want to sort by the frequency column, and I want it to be largest to smallest. Okay? So you'll notice my graph over here is going to change to descending order. Okay? Now, it looks like I lucked out on my formulas. None of them messed up. Well, the cumulative distribution messed up, right? No, it didn't. Yeah, it did. Okay? So this column's messed up. Okay? So if I do the 4, oops, sorry, the first one's still 12. This one is going to be the 4 plus the 12. And now I'm going to copy that down. Now it works. Okay? So only the cumulative distribution messed up on that one. Okay? All right, so that is a Pareto chart. Okay? Now we can also do a bar chart with 2 sets of data. Okay? Let's say, for example, if I click on this second spreadsheet down here, and oh, by the way, let me just mention this really quickly. So you're going to have these little tabs down here that are going to have different sheets. Okay? On your test next week, don't do the first problem and think you're done. Do all the problems. There's probably going to be, usually I give you about 5 or 6 problems, usually with ABC parts on the computer test. Okay? So there's always 2 things that happen. Number 1, people only do the first problem and they don't see the rest of the test. So don't be that guy. Okay? I can only grade what you turn in. Number 2, people upload the blank spreadsheet instead of the one that they were working on. Okay? So make sure, usually what I tell people to do when they're saving their file, save it with your name, and then find your name. Upload your name, and then you can also check with me to make sure I got it. Okay? So every semester I have 1 or 2 people that either upload the blank test or they only do the first problem. And then I can only grade what you turn in. Okay? So this is the easy test, remember that. So make sure you don't make that mistake. All right, 2 sets of data. Let's say, for example, and this is an interesting thing here. I want to do a relative frequency bar graph for education and 9th grade, or education level, and then I'm comparing 1990 versus the year 2006. Okay? So it's Albert. Can you tell me how to create a bar graph for this?
Grab the corner, education.
Highlight all your data.
You go to insert.
Insert.
Bar graph.
The bar graph, click on the first bar graph. Okay. Now there's actually a mistake there. Do you see that? What's the mistake? Besides that it's not labeled properly. It's not percentage. I said do a frequency distribution. I could do the percentage, but that's not what I was looking for. There's another mistake. It says series 1 and 2, right? And did you notice here that it also graphed the education 1990 and it's 2006? I didn't want it to graph that. Tricky. Okay, so pay attention to little things like that. I don't want it to graph the years. I want those years to be series 1 and series 2, right? So if you press the delete key, that'll go away. Okay, now here's how you fix that. Okay, if you go over here to 1990 and if you put an apostrophe before the 1990, watch what happens. It'll go to the left side. And there's a little green thing, green arrow thing here, or a green triangle. If you put your mouse right above that, or actually if you click on it and then click this yellow thing here, it says that number is stored as text. Now, you might not want to do that. In our case, we do. We want to do the same thing with 2006. I'm going to put an apostrophe here so it thinks that that's text. Okay? We're going to do everything that Albert said again. We're going to highlight our data. We're going to go to Insert. We're going to go to Recommended Charts, 2D column. And now, look, 1990 and 2006, just the way I wanted it. Okay? Albert, do you remember how to make this look even better?
You can change the title.
Change the title to
Education.
Enrollment Levels 1990 versus 2006, let's say. And what else?
You can add, click on the little plus.
Click on the plus sign.
Titles.
That's an axis type.